Welcome to Introduction to Retail Optics Module 1. Before I start the course, I want to make sure that you are aware that this course is specifically designed for people new to the optometry industry. So if you have a new receptionist or if you have a new frontline staff, then this would be an excellent course for them to do. But it starts at the very beginning. So if you have experience in the optom industry, or if you're an optometrist or an optical dispenser, you might not be very interested in the information. But if you're a frontline, it's always a good thing to recap education, and it's really going to build on information until we reach an advanced level. But we have to start at the beginning. Because it's a very good place to start. I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay, let's go to that slide. Okay, so first I have to tell you that I am an optometrist and I am qualified to present this course to you. The complete course, consisting of 4 modules, will be consisting of the following information. We're going to talk about occupations in the optical industry. We're going to have a look at common tools and instruments that you will find in an optical optometry practice. We're going to have a look at structures of the eye, so we're going to do a bit of anatomy. We're going to do introduction to optics, discuss lenses. We're going to have a look at the focusing mechanism of the eye. We're going to look at an optical prescription for spectacles. We're going to talk about lenses, and we're going to talk about lens treatments and coatings. So for today, there's 3 things that we will be discussing. The first thing is the occupations in the optical industry. The second thing is instruments and common tools in an optometry practice. And then we're going to do the anatomy of the eye. Okay, so why is it important to know what occupations there are in the optical industry? So firstly, it allows you to work effectively with a team of different backgrounds. So you're going to learn how to communicate with each one differently on their level. You're going to know with whom to be technical and with whom not to be technical. You're also going to learn to understand their optical language. And if you do understand that and you do know how to communicate differently with each role, then it shows that you've got that you've got knowledge in the optical industry, and people can trust you with the information that they give to you, and they know that you understand what is going on. Okay, so the first role we're going to discuss is an dispensing optician or an optician. In South Africa, we call them an optical dispenser or just a dispenser. So this is someone that finished school and then they went to university to complete a formal grade degree or a diploma in optical dispensing. So they use their knowledge of lenses and frames to calculate different lens thicknesses, sizes, taking measurements so that the patient gets the thinnest lens possible and can have the biggest reading area, etc. So when they have an optical prescription for spectacles that from an optometrist, then they can very easily choose the correct frame and take the measurements to provide the patient with the correct pair of spectacles. So they are involved in all the technical work required to place orders at a lab, and they can work in 2 environments. The first environment is in a practice, so they will be on the floor helping patients with frames, taking measurements, choosing products, or they can work in a laboratory. In a lab, they will either be answering difficult questions from customers, or they might be involved in the technical side by physically cutting and fitting lenses into frames, or surfacing lenses, or any technical part or procedure in a laboratory. The second person we're going to discuss in the optometry industry is a sales consultant. We call them frontline staff in South Africa, and I understand that you must be a frontline staff if you're listening to this course. So this is actually a very difficult job to have because there's no formal education required for it, but you need to know a little bit about everything in the optometry industry to be good in your job. And that is why courses like this is very important for you, and to build your knowledge so that you can make a very good impact on the patient. When he walks into that practice, you're going to be the first person that he sees. So you need to look the part, you need to know how to do your job, and you need to understand optics. So in practices where there is not an optical dispenser, you might be required to choose frames for your patients, give them optical advice. You need to work out quotations, answer the phone, make appointments. You need to deal with the medical aids. You need to communicate with the optometrist, sometimes with the ophthalmologist. So you need to know exactly how to deal with each one of these aspects. Okay, so let's go to the next one. That's going to be the optometrist. An optometrist has finished school. Then they went to university where they completed a 4-year degree. They can do most of the work of an optical dispenser. Plus, they can test eyes, they can fit contact lenses, they can also deal with certain pathology by either prescribing medication or referring them to an ophthalmologist, depending on which year they finished and what was included in their course. And this would be the person in the practice that the patients come to see, to have their eyes tested. Okay. The last role that we're going to discuss is an ophthalmologist. So an ophthalmologist is someone that finished school, they went to university, and they studied to become a general practitioner. After that, they specialized in the eyes. So they are excellent in treating ocular pathology, eye diseases or conditions, and they do the operations on the eyes. They know how to test eyes for spectacle prescription, but they do not spend a lot of time on that part of a consultation. So if you have a patient coming into the practice with a written prescription for spectacles from an ophthalmologist, it would be a good idea to make an appointment for the patient with the optometrist himself, just to recheck that prescription. Okay. All right, so we're going to move on to the next section, which is going to be tools or instruments that you find in an optometry practice. The first thing we're going to discuss is a pupilometer. Now, not all optometrists like to use a pupilometer. It is basically a digital device to take a PD measurement. And the PD measurement is the distance between the two eyes. It stands for pupillary distance. So the patient puts his nose there in the center, and this part will be on the top of his forehead. And then the person taking the measurements will use his fingers to move these two dials. If he looks into the oculus, he's going to see vertical lines. And by moving these two dials, he's going to move the vertical lines so that they are in the center of the pupil. And then he will be able to read the PD measurements monocularly, digitally from this device. Now, if you don't use a pupilometer, you can use a PD ruler. A PD ruler is just a normal ruler. Sometimes it has an indentation there in the middle to fit the nose in there to make it more comfortable for the patient. It's used to measure the distance between the two eyes by using the pupil as a reference point, or you use it to take Segard measurements, frame measurement, boxing measurements. So the PD ruler is a very common tool in a practice. The third tool we're going to discuss is a pen torch. Some optometrists use a pen torch to find the corneal reflex. If you shine, it's nothing else except a torch, a light source. You shine it in the eye, and then you will see that there's a white reflex. And that is a very good like a reference point if you are taking a PD measurement, because sometimes the pupil is very dark, the iris is very dark, you can't see the pupil, so some people prefer to do it that way. Okay, now this is the thing that you're going to use often. This is called a frame heater. Some practices uses bead baths. Others prefer to use these frame heaters that blow out hot air. Either way, both of them are being used to warm up a plastic frame before it is bent. If you bend a plastic frame without heating it up, it's going to snap and it's going to break. So it's very important to use your frame heater to heat the frame up before you make any frame adjustments. This is called a lens meter, or we can use the term vertometer or just a vert. You get a digital one and you get a manual vert. The optometrist will definitely be working with the manual vert, but you might be instructed to work with the digital vert to check prescriptions of lenses. So it can be patients coming in with their old glasses, so you might be checking what the script is, writing it down, or it can be glasses coming from the lab, and you have to check the prescription before it's handed out to the patient. So this is basically an instrument that reads off the prescription of the lenses. The next thing we're going to discuss is a letter acuity chart, or a VA chart in South Africa. This is a standardized chart that we use to measure what a patient can see. So if I tell someone in South Africa that they've got 6/6 vision, it will mean exactly the same as if I tell someone in America they've got 6/6 vision. Because we standardize the sizes of the letters, and the chart must be 6 meters away from the patient, or 20 feet. So that's why 6/6 and 20/20 means exactly the same thing. Your optometrists will also be making use of trial lenses and a trial frame. This is to provide a more natural environment for a patient to look through a specific prescription, so that they can walk around with the script, or maybe take a book closer or further away to determine the correct reading distance. So it's basically a frame that the patient puts on, and then it's loose lenses that you can put in and change until you find the correct prescription. Now, a lot of years ago, we only had a trial frame and trial lenses to use. And then the optometrist became a bit lazy, so we invented a refractor head, or a phoropter head, as we call it in South Africa. So this is nothing else except a thing that we put in front of the patient's face. He looks through the two holes, and we change the lenses by turning a knob. So instead of having to walk to the trial case and putting new lenses in, you just turn the knob. So this makes testing eyes quicker, and we can also have a lot more options of lenses in the phoropter head. So so this is basically the latest method of testing eyes. These days we also have digital refractor heads, or digital phoropters. So now we don't turn the knobs anymore, but we push the buttons. So it's getting more and more technical as time goes on. You get it in different sizes and you get it in different colors, but they all do exactly the same. And this equipment has actually been unchanged for many, many years. Okay, the other thing that you might be using a lot in practice is called an autorefractor. Now, an autorefractor takes a digital prescription. So it does not require any input from your patient. He places his head in front of that machine and you press a button, and that machine can tell you what the patient's prescription is without him saying anything. Now, that's not always very accurate, but it might be a good starting point for an examination, or it might be a good thing to double check a prescription, or if a patient is not able to speak, then this could be a very good objective way of determining a prescription. So in practice, if we do an objective refraction with an autorefractor, and we also test the patient's eyes with the phoropter and the trial frame and lenses, and we get a subjective refraction, and we get the same answer for both of these two refractions, then we know we cannot be wrong. We definitely found the correct answer. Okay, the next piece of equipment is called a slit lamp. Now, a slit lamp is basically a microscope. So we are using this equipment to enlarge images so that we can see up to a cellular level and see what is going on in a patient's eyes. We use this equipment to diagnose certain eye diseases. We manage treatment, we fit contact lenses, we might be taking out eyelashes that's bothering a patient. So it's basically enlarging the image up to a very small, like cellular level, so that we can see what's going on in the eye. Okay, so the last section for today will be the structures of the eye. So why is it important to know this? Many of the measurements that is needed for lenses take into account certain anatomical reference points in the eye. So you need to know those reference points. You need to know where the pupil is, where the iris is, and you need to know why they are there and what do they do. It also helps to demonstrate your understanding, that you know exactly how the eye works. And if you understand something, then people can trust you with information, and your patients that come in will see you as someone that is knowledgeable and knows what to answer them, and they will trust you. There's also new lens products that on the market that helps to protect certain structures in the eye. And if you understand the structures in the eye, then you will understand why these products are on the market, and you will be able to advise patients in a better way. Okay, so the first structure we're going to discuss is the eyeball itself. So if you look at the eyeball from the front to the back, if you would cut it in half, you will see that a normal eyeball is about 25 millimeters in diameter. And it's basically a hollow ball that is filled with a transparent gel. So it's nice and squishy. Then you've got eyelashes. Now the eyelashes serves a very important role. They're not only there to look pretty, but they are there to protect your eyes from foreign bodies. They are extremely sensitive. So if you touch your eyelashes, you will have a normal reflex to close your eyes. And that reflex is built into you to protect your eyes from foreign bodies. It's important to note the length of eyelashes. Some patients might go for eyelash extensions, and this can cause a lot of difficulty in choosing a frame because the lashes are not allowed to touch the lenses at the back. It's going to make the lenses dirty and it's going to scratch the lenses. So if you do have a patient with eyelash extensions, please note that so that you can maybe choose a metal frame where you can adjust the nose pieces, or you can choose a plastic frame with a narrower nose bridge than normally required so that it can sit a bit further from the eyes. Okay, the next structure is the cornea. The cornea is a very thin transparent layer. It's about 0.5 millimeters thick, and it is in front of the eye. So if you look at someone's eye from the side, you will see there's like a transparent ball in the front, and that is called the cornea. It's extremely sensitive. There's a lot of nerves on a very small area located, and that's the reason why it feels like a mountain in your eyes if there's only maybe a piece of dust. And that's also a protective mechanism so that we are sensitive to anything coming into our eyes to protect our vision. Some people that wear contact lenses might have less sensitivity on their corneas, and this is not always a very good thing because they only realize that they've got a problem much later than they would have if the sensitivity was normal on the cornea. So you can, if you've seen a contact lens, you can think of the cornea basically as the shape of a contact lens. It is round, it's spherical, and you can see through it. So that is the cornea in the front of the eye. And we use the cornea to help us focus our vision. So it plays a very big role in the focus mechanism of the eyes. Okay, good. Let's have a look at a sketch of the eye, an anatomical sketch. So you will see in the front where this arrow is pointing, that layer over there, that is the cornea. And remember when we discussed the torch earlier in this module, where we said we're going to get a corneal reflex with the torch. That is the reflex that's happening over here on this layer there. And it's there for a reference point when taking PD measurements in some cases. Not all optometrists use it. Okay, the next structure is going to be the iris. Now, the iris is the colored part of the eye, and it sits behind the cornea. So you get people with different colored eyes, blue, brown, green, and they can wear contact lenses to change the color of their irises. So that's the portion that's giving you your eye color. Let's have a look at this anatomical sketch. So the cornea is there in the front, and over here you get the iris. So the iris is like a round donut, and in the middle there's a hole. And that hole goes through from the front to the back of your eye, and it's called your pupil. So the iris can contract to make the pupil smaller, or it can relax to make the pupil wider. And the stimulus for this is going to be the amount of light that it gets. So when you are looking into very bright light, your iris is going to contract to make your pupil smaller so that less light enters the eye to protect the back of the eye from the light. And when you are in the dark, your iris will relax, the pupil will open up to allow as much light as possible to go through the pupil in order to get better vision. Okay, so there we see the pupil. That is the black hole there in the eye. It's a hole in the middle of the iris. And that is your tunnel where your light enters your eye. Okay, so let's have a look here. We discussed the amount of light going into the eye when we talked about the iris. So the pupil can be difficult to see if it is a very dark iris. You can see in this case or in that case, and then it might be necessary to shine that pen torch in the eye to have a corneal reflex to use as a reference point. There's a blue eye with a large pupil and a greenish eye with a very small pupil. Okay. So the next structure I'll be discussing is the lens. The lens is at the back of the iris, and that's this ball over here. So it actually looks like a very thick pair of prescription lenses. It's round, and it can actually change its shape. You will see that there's muscles there on the sides. Over there and over there, and it can become rounder and flatter to help the eye to focus. Now, this lens inside of the eye has a lot of changes that it goes through as a patient gets older. It can become less it can be a bit opaque, like a cataract. That's going to be a cataract. So the patient cannot see through the lens very clearly anymore. And then we need to do a cataract operation by removing the lens and putting an artificial intraocular lens in the eye. And also when a patient becomes older, the lens tends to be not as flexible as it was when the patient was younger. And that is when someone needs to start wearing reading glasses when they get older. So did you know the cornea and the lens create the focusing of the eye? So the cornea is responsible for 2/3 of the focusing power, and the lens is responsible for 1/3 of the focusing power. So if you have a perfect cornea and if you have a perfect lens, that means you've got excellent vision, and you will have 6/6 vision on our VA chart, as we discussed earlier. Now the next structure is the retina. So I want you to think of the retina as a screen at the back of the eye. If you went to the movies, then you've got a projector, and the image of the movie is projected on a screen, and that screen can be compared to the retina of the eye. So that screen is where your vision is going to play off. That what you see is going to be reflected on that screen at the back of your eye called the retina. Now, it's on the inside of the eye. You cannot see it from the outside, except if you maybe take a photo and you see these red pupils from people, then that means it's actually the retina reflecting. So you see the retina. So the retina has a lot of layers. It's got a lot of layers, and it's very sensitive, and because it's got nerves. So it's sensitive to movement, it's sensitive to detail, and it's sensitive to light and dark. So you need to know that the retina is one structure of the eye that needs to be protected from different light sources, but we will be discussing that later on. Now, on the retina, you get a sweet spot, and we call that sweet spot the macula. Now, the macula is a small spot on the retina that's being used for central vision. So that will be the type of vision that you will be using for reading and writing and to see people's faces. So that is your central vision. And again, the macula is a portion of the eye that needs to be protected from certain light sources, but that's not something that we will be discussing in this module. So let's go through the structures that we've discussed. In the front of the eye, in the very front, we get the cornea. Behind the cornea, we get the iris. In the middle of the iris is the pupil. At the back of the pupil and the iris is the lens. And at the back of the eye, we get the retina. And in the middle of the retina, we get the macula. And that is where your detailed vision is formed. So cornea and lens creates the focusing. The eye is a delicate but very tough and robust. It works similar to a camera but switches into video mode all the time, and it never runs out of memory or battery. Great, so this is our discussion points for this module. The next one will be Introduction to Retail Optics Module 2, and we will be building on this information. I hope you have a great day.